Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the June 6th meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission meeting here in Denver. It is 1 o'clock and I will call the meeting to order. The first thing we generally do when we begin a meeting is to introduce each of the commissioners. I will introduce myself first. My name is Julie Johnson and I'm the Historic Preservation Project Manager, and I was nominated by the community at large.
I'm Nick Fusianis. I'm an architect and a developer, and I was nominated by the AIA.
I'm Ann Wattenberg. I'm an architect, also nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect. All the architects are on this side of the table. And I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
I'm George Dennis, retired law enforcement. I was nominated by History Colorado. I live in Landmark.
I'm Larry Sykes. I'm an architect nominated by History Colorado.
And I'm Erica Warzel. I'm an architectural historian and preservation consultant nominated by the community at large.
And I'm Brittany Bryant, Denver Landmark Preservation staff.
Thank you very much. Everybody, we have one meeting record to approve. Does anyone have any comments or corrections? Seeing none, is there do we hear a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve said minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, the meeting records have been approved. Thank you very much. At the beginning of every meeting, we do sit. I'm sorry. At the beginning of every meeting, we go over the audio tips for those of you joining us virtually. For better sound quality, we strongly encourage you to download Zoom on your desktop, laptop, tablet, or mobile device. Click audio settings to bring up an additional view. Add a background noise suppression. Test your speaker and microphone. Adjust their next volumes. For presenters or public commenters, when it is your turn to speak, to mute or unmute, click on that microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. Expanding the menu next to the microphone will reveal additional options. If you still have audio challenges, then you can switch to audio or to your phone for the audio. Moving on then to public comment. At the beginning of the meeting, we reserve a time for the public to comment on historic preservation in Denver in general. This is not specific to any project. If you wish to comment on a project, your time will come as we review that project. But right now, this is just for comments on historic preservation in Denver in general. If you are joining by phone, please dial 9 on your keypad or raise your hand. Email landmark@denver.org. Taylor, can you tell if you have anybody? No, that's right. Okay. Anybody in the crowd? Okay. All right. Then we will not have any public comments for that. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. These are routine design review items recommended for the commission approval without discussion. Applicants with items passed on the consent agenda should coordinate separately with the Landmark Preservation staff to receive a certificate of appropriateness. There is no public comment for consent agenda items. I will announce the consent agenda by address. I'll ask the commissioners if there are any, if they need to be removed from consideration or any ex parte or conflict of interest. Commission members can announce any questions. They can also pull something off the consent agenda should they want to see it reviewed further. Then the commission will move and vote on the consent agenda. So starting off, first we have 2023-COA-191 at 928 Olive Street, Montclair. 2021-COA-191 at 2151 East Hawthorne Place in Country Club. 2022-COA-450 at 1016 28th Street in Curtis Park. 2023-COA-199 at 1037 and 1039 29th Street in Curtis Park. 2023 COA 177 at 2125 East Hawthorne Place in the Country Club. And 2023 COA 205 at 440 Pennsylvania Street in Alpharetta. Commissioners, do you have any concerns, any questions regarding the consent agenda? Yes.
My concern doesn't affect the compliance of these projects with the standards. But there are a couple of cases where the detailing might leak over time. So would it be appropriate just to say that the applicants should review the submitted documents to make sure that various details are designed not to leak and to be sustainable and durable?
I mean, that's not necessarily within our purview.
It's not, I know,
Yeah.
that's a concern for us to approve projects that meet the guidelines, but don't really represent great construction practice.
So. Yeah, so I think a friendly comment, I think, yeah, we can accept a friendly comment to that.
Okay.
Is there a particular one?
No, I just want to be non-specific, that
Okay.
all the applicants should, and their architects and designers should be.
Well, we're not used to water here in Denver, we just do a lot of buildings, so because it's top of mind. All right, do I hear a motion?
Quick question just for staff, the first two projects have different years but the same COA number, and I just wanted to make sure that that is just a coincidence or not.
I just double checked that online.
Thank you.
That's all then.
It's just. So we're okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead, Jesse.
Mine is correct. Okay. Also because Julie stated all of the projects, you don't have to restate them.
Okay, great. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Okay, Madam Chair, I move to approve the listed items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
George has seconded. Thank you very much. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The consent agenda as presented approved. This has been unanimously approved. So next we have a public hearing, and during that public hearing process, the chair, that's me, will announce the public hearing agenda by address. Commission members announce any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest. The staff will introduce the application and recommendation. Commissioner, question of staff. The applicant presentation is limited to 10 minutes. Commissioners may question one applicant. Public comment period for any of those of you wishing to comment on this is 3 minutes per person during the public comment period. And if you would like to speak regarding this project and you are not part of this project, please click the hand raise button. And for those calling via the phone, dial 9 to raise your hand or email prior to the meeting. Staff will clarify if necessary. The commission will deliberate. Commission will make a motion and vote. All right, I will call the public commentary in order. The project that we have before us today is 2023-LNDEMO-104 at 95 Bannock Street in the Baker District, and our staff person is Brittany. Well, that was
So sorry. So our first item is total demolition of an accessory structure at 95 Bannock Street. You can see the property in question outlined in red. It is an accessory structure to 95 Bannock Street, and this structure does face onto West First Avenue. Staff did feel that this structure did have some historical significance. So we did post public notice of this demolition request on the property. And the property was publicly noticed for demolition. So the accessory structure to the rear of 95 Bannock Street was originally constructed prior to 1893, as shown in the Denver Sanborn maps. By 1902, the structure was addressed 2020 Cherokee Street. However, the map does not note the building use. The 1911 city registry notes that the structure was used as a grocery store that was eventually converted into a clothing manufacturer use. By 1929, the Sanborn maps record the structure as a dwelling unit with a one-story attached garage, which is the current footprint base today. The structure does encroach into the right-of-way along West First Avenue and the alley behind Bannock Street, as you can see in this aerial image here. The encroachment into the right-of-way is 8 3/8 of an inch and along First Avenue and 3 1/2 inch into the right-of-way along the alley. The applicant has explored several options to preserve this structure. However, due to the structural condition and the encroachments into the right-of-way, it has become not feasible to preserve this structure as it would require a tier 2 or 3 encroachment that is not permanently granted to allow for this structure's continued use. Additionally, it has several foundation issues that the applicant has explored fixing, but just all the problems that this property has presented, the applicant has decided to pursue total demolition and reconstruction that the commission would review at a later date, which will be today. So the Baker Historic District was designated as significant under the following criteria: history and architecture. It is associated with the historical development of Denver from 1873 to 1937. It did provide worker and middle-class housing in an era of rapid population growth. Additionally, some of the structures within the district are associated with notable Denver architects and master builders. Additionally, the district is representative of late 19th and early 20th century architecture. Staff do feel that this structure shows the evolution of the Baker Historic District. It is common to have these accessory structures within the district that front onto streets that were converted into commercial uses from private dwelling units and back. This is due to the district's irregular layout. It's one of the only districts in the city that has both north-south primary streets and alleys. However, staff feel that this structure in particular lacks integrity, and therefore are recommending the commission approve this structure for demolition. So landmark staff feel that this structure lacks integrity in setting, design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. So the building location has not changed. However, the setting with the preservation of the Baker Historic District has preserved the general setting, but it's unclear if this structure was originally an accessory structure or an independent dwelling unit. So the way that the lot is configured now, it does really look accessory to the existing structure, and staff do not feel that it has a clear established connection with the primary structure or clearly expressed its use during the district's period of significance. Additionally, the structure does not retain its design integrity. Originally, it was constructed as a barn and then converted into commercial uses, then into residential uses. And then an attached garage was added to the back. And then additionally, you see alterations along West First Avenue that indicate the evolution of storefronts back to residential uses. So again, we feel that the design integrity of the structure has not been maintained due to all the alterations to the structure. It was constructed out of brick. There have been alterations to the West First Avenue facade, as you can see here with the stucco and storefront windows, and also the windows in the structure are not intact, so it is missing some of that historic fabric. The structure does not have notable elements of workmanship to give physical evidence of a particular time, of a particular period or time. So again, due to all the alterations to the structure, it's hard to place it into a specific association with the historic district and the primary structure. And then finally, there's no known direct link with an important person or event in the Baker Historic District with this particular structure. So due to all the challenges the preservation of this structure has presented, its general lack of integrity, staff are recommending approval of the demolition. Again, all demolition within our historic districts is conditional on approval of a replacement plan. So we would not release this for demolition until that plan was approved. And we do have a phase one plan before us today if the commission approves this demolition request.
Brittany, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Brittany? All right, then, do we have the applicant with us and the applicant like to make a presentation?
Ozzy and Andrew, you should be able to turn your camera on and unmute now.
Oh, there you go.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So you have 10 minutes to make the presentation. At the beginning of your presentation, please give us your name and address for our records. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. And yeah, Andrew's letting me speak first. I'm Ozzy Friedrich with Radix Design. We are at 528 West First Avenue in the Baker neighborhood. So the first thing I'd like to say is we didn't expect to be bringing this structure to you to request demolition. We have been working over 14 months at this point to get to this point. And basically, the longer that we have worked with this structure, the more obstacles we've found to its adaptive reuse. The biggest ones, as Brittany suggested, are the structural condition of the existing building. The finished floor elevation of the ground floor is a major concern due to Denver wastewater regulations. And then the encroachments into the alley and First Avenue right-of-way. And just to be totally clear, we are not talking about a zoning setback encroachment. We are talking about the walls of the building sitting on city property, about half of the alley wall and more close to the entirety of the front wall section. The finished floor elevation, I should mention first, Denver wastewater requires the ground floor of an inhabited structure to be 2 feet above the flow line at the nearby curb. The floor slab of the structure is actually a little step down from the adjacent sidewalk. So we are below that requirement. We looked at, what if we raise the ground floor height to meet the wastewater regulation, but then we are left with a ground floor that's about 7'3" floor to ceiling height, which is conceivable, it's code compliant, but it's not something that anyone's going to want to put the kind of investment that this project would take into making happen. The encroachments are, probably the biggest single issue here. The city does have a process for approving encroachments. It's much more commercially aligned, and I'm much more used to seeing it on things like the loading docks in Rhino and that sort of thing. If we pursue the encroachment, it gets sent out to over 30 different city agencies. Each one has the opportunity to deny the encroachment permit. And many of these agencies are, less and less flexible towards residential construction every day, and don't particularly give deference to landmarks and to landmarks requirements. As we think about this, as we've been working on it, I've been trying to put myself in the shoes of a reviewer at Doty, say, looking at somebody wanting an encroachment permit for a somewhat shaky brick structure that's in the alley that is exposed to damage from vehicular traffic, and where there is a wastewater main that they're going to have to dig up and maintain sooner or later. I think if I were the Doty reviewer for that, I'd probably say no, because they don't want to be responsible for something like this. So that's a hypothetical, of course. And I guess the other side of the hypothetical is, if we do pursue the preservation of the existing structure with all of the things it has to navigate, If we are somehow able to navigate all of those different things, then we are still looking at the owner needing to invest over $500,000 into converting a structure that sits in an alley. And that structure will be highly vulnerable to damage from the alley traffic or from alley excavation. And it's not like we could add bollards to protect it, because that would be even more encroaching into the alley. I think our submittal goes into more detail, but we've really reviewed many options for the preservation and adaptive reuse of the structure, and we've just been consistently finding that they're not viable. And honestly, that probably has something to do with how the structure looks today. There have been no options for the useful continued life of it as it is right now. Now, in terms of the design guidelines, you can tell me better than I know, but it looks to me like the critical question here is whether this is a contributing structure in the Baker neighborhood. Now, as Brittany mentioned, it did have a historic address, and that historic address is not listed in the neighborhood's original designation documents, while the primary house's address is listed. In Baker, accessory structures have not generally been treated as contributing. And I think there are good reasons for that, beyond simply convenience or whatever. The accessory structures in Baker are typically not as creative, as beautiful as the primary houses are. And they also generally are not built to last in the same way. It's very typical for accessory structures in Baker to have shallow foundations, to have lighter underbuilt framing, or to be built, say, without a surveyor, which kind of brings us full circle to where we are with this, where I think in the history of this, somebody decided to build it. They didn't call in a surveyor. A week later, it was done, and now it is where it is. That all said, while I do not believe it's a contributing structure, I do think it also still has a presence that the neighborhood values. And that's why we're bringing this to you as part of a proposal to rebuild a structure that would be the memory or the ghost of this building. So that, when all of this is done, we would have a new inhabitable dwelling that can occupy the same place in the neighborhood's heart that this building does. When we've achieved that, then we also have a place where a family can live, and which isn't, in an active process of falling apart without viable options for its preservation. Beyond that, I think we'd like to really give some appreciation to Brittany and Landmark staff for their patience through this very long discussion. I'll be very interested to hear the commissioner's discussion today. Andrew, as the owner, is there anything you'd like to add to what I've said here?
Just real quickly, hi everybody, thanks for having us. I know this is not a hopeful thing that we'd like to propose. One of the original reasons why I joined with Ozzy is his desire to conserve the existing structures in their neighborhood in Baker, and really wanted to try and make this just another one of those cool things that when you're walking down the street in the quirky Baker neighborhood, you find another cool, quirky little house. So our hope was from the beginning to try to conserve this property, as Ozzy had mentioned. But unfortunately, just with all of the challenges we were faced with, we just kept on circling back to, what can we possibly do to make this work, and putting a square peg into a round hole just wasn't going to fit. This property in particular actually has a lot of significance to me. I actually proposed to my wife in this property in the hopes that we would build it and fix it up and build it and live in it. And obviously that did not happen. So anyways, long story short, you know, we're sad to even be proposing the demolition of this building, but you know, it seems to Ozzy and I, after 14 months of hard work, that is quite literally our only option, it would seem, in order to make this a viable structure for the neighborhood. So again, I didn't start with my name, Andrew Johnson, 419 Franklin, lived in the neighborhood in Baker for well over 10 years. And so, yeah, thank you guys for your time. That's all I have for you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicants? No? Okay, great. Gentlemen, thank you. And now we will go on to the public hearing portion. Taylor, do we have anybody with their hand raised? Is there anyone here?
I don't know if they know that they're supposed to raise their hand yet, since of that.
Raise your hand. If you are joining by phone, dial 9 on your phone keypad or to raise your hand, or email landmark@denver.gov. You're virtually on Zoom. There's a little hand.
No hands raised.
No hands raised. Okay, great. Sorry about that, Taylor. I thought I'd done that earlier. All right, so there were no public comments. Staff, do you have anything to reiterate?
I have been working with this applicant for over a year, and I know that applicant has reached out to some other city agencies to begin some of these initial conversations about preserving the structure, and they were not received favorably. And we can make recommendations to Dottie, but they don't have to follow our recommendations. But the only public comment I have, Baker Arno did review the demolition of this structure, and did not unanimously vote for it, but did approve demolition.
I actually do have a question that maybe the applicant can answer. I just wanted to double check. I thought maybe this was a side question, but since there's this issue of possible listing of buildings that are contributing to the district, I'm not sure that the building would have been addressed 220 Cherokee. I think it probably was 220 West First Avenue. And so I just wanted to double check that had been that list of buildings had been compared against that more likely address of 220 West First.
Yes, absolutely. If 220 Cherokee snuck into the application, that was a typo and a brain glitch because of a different ADU I worked on Cherokee Street at one point. The original address was 220 West First, and that has been checked against the original listing. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I have also checked the designation.
Okay.
Sorry, I just left that in there. I had many staff reports.
Sure, yeah.
Any other questions for staff or for the applicants? Okay, if that's the case, then I will close the public hearing. And commissioners, we will go into deliberation. What are your thoughts?
I have to support staff and applicants, much as this is a needed but not welcomed surgery. And as long as what replaces it really meets our guidelines, I think the building is not, from what I've heard this evening, the building really is salvageable for a modern purpose. So I would tend to support staff's conclusion and we'll finish.
Yes.
And that was.
Yeah, I know. Larry?
I agree. I think that the applicant put together a really good explanation of all of the issues at hand. And I think it's clear that both the owner and architect are, not happy to be doing this. And as a former Baker resident, I totally get that. But yeah, it's a rough situation that building is in.
Anybody else?
Well, I agree with staff's recommendation. appreciate the owners and the architects endeavor to save the building, but I'm surprised at the amount of effort they put into it and didn't come to this conclusion although it's.
Anybody else?
Good faith effort.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I just want to add that, it is sad to see this go because of the different layers and uses that we see in these urban neighborhoods that, you know, these commercial uses that kind of sneak in and are part of the whole fabric of the neighborhood, and to see that kind of lost, the history of that lost by one more piece is additionally sad, but I do agree with the overall assessment of lack of integrity.
Agree.
All right, do I hear a motion from the floor? I know, it hurts.
Madam Chair, I move to conditionally approve application number 2023 LMDEMO -104 for the total demolition of the accessory structure at 95 Bannock Street, with the condition that the replacement structure be approved by Landmark Preservation Commission prior to the issuance of the demolition approval, as per section 30-6 of chapter 3 of the Municipal Code. Presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
George, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Gary has seconded. Thank you. All in favor, aye. All opposed, nay. All right, unanimously, 2023-LMDEMO-104 has been approved. All right, that is the end of our public hearing. We are on to our design review projects now. The chair will announce the design review items on agenda. In order to address the commission members, announce any ex parte or conflicts of interest. Staff will introduce the application and recommendation, and the commissioners can ask the questions of staff. The applicant presentation is limited to 10 minutes. Commissioners may also question the applicant. At which point we will go on to public comment. During the design review process, public comment is 2 minutes per person. And if you would like to speak regarding a specific project, and we're not part of that applicant team, please click the hand raise button. For those calling via phone, dial 9 to raise your hand, or email landmark@denvergov.org prior to the public comment. Staff can clarify if necessary. The commission will deliberate, will make motion and vote and then process. So our first is 2023-COA-142 at 95 Bannock Street in Baker. And the staff person is again Brittany.
So our first project today is for a new tandem house behind 95 Bannock Street. The new tandem house will have a footprint of 19 3/4 inch by 44 feet and a total height of 21 feet 9 5/8 inch. So here is the proposed project. In terms of placement on the site, the new tandem house will comply with the required setbacks. So it will move the proposed tandem house out of the public right of way along West First Avenue and the alley. So here you can see the proposed relationship of the primary structure to the new tandem house. This is the new tandem house here. The prior one was the previous site plan. So you can see how it will shift on the site. It is subordinate to the primary structure in terms of footprint. The existing home has a footprint of 460 square feet, and the proposed tandem house is 804 square feet. So in terms of how the massing will shift on this site, the applicant has provided this very handy graphic. So the new tandem house will be 1 foot 6 inches taller than the existing structure. It will move 3 feet 8 inches to the east. It will be minimally wider by 1 foot 6 inches. It will move back from West First Avenue 1 foot 8 inches, and then it will be 3 feet 6 inches shorter. So pretty similar footprint, however, shifting the proposed structure on the site to comply with the required setbacks and current code regulations. So the proposed structure will be a tandem house. It does have a living space on the ground floor with a bedroom and bathroom, as you can see here in this proposed footprint. The proposed footprint is somewhat similar to the existing footprint of the original structure that was just approved for demolition. Because again, the applicant is trying to honor the memory of the prior structure. On the second level, there will be 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. And then the roof will be a gable roof with a dormer on the east facade at the rear of the structure, and then skylights to provide lighting into the upper floors. Tandem houses are reviewed through a 2-step process. So today at the commission, we're only looking at the phase 1 mass form and context. So again, the proposed tandem house is very similar to the existing structure. It is a gable roof structure. It will have the memory of storefront design and entrances along West First Avenue. However, those will now be window openings. Typically, staff would recommend something with a more residential design in terms of storefront or window proportions. However, as this is honoring the memory of the prior structure and the storefront design, staff did feel that these opening proportions were appropriate for the structure along West First Avenue. The new entrance, however, will be on the east facade, so there will not be an entrance along West First Avenue. Simple gable structure in the rear. It is minimally shorter than the primary gable for that rear portion of the structure. The applicant is requesting a height and bulk plane violation for this structure. The existing structure does violate the bulk plane. The new proposed structure will violate the bulk plane on the north and south ends of the structure. It does not violate the height, but it is within the bulk plane. Staff are supportive of this administrative adjustment as if the gable roof form is compatible with the surrounding historic context. The primary structure, which is a Queen Anne structure with a gable roof, and it honors the memory of the historic structure. So on the bottom here, you have the east and west elevations. The east elevation, again, will be where the new entrance into the tandem house is located. And then the west elevation is along the alley. It does have minimal openings, but if you look at the elevations comparison for the existing structure, again, it's very similar and it is referencing that memory of that prior structure. So here is the proposed renderings. We will look at the phase 2 design details at a later stage, but we do believe that the structure will be clad entirely in brick. And we will look at what is in those specific openings at a later phase. But generally speaking, staff feel that the mass scale and form is appropriate for the Baker Historic District and is recommending approval of the phase 1.
Brittany, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Brittany? At this stage. Okay, great. All right, our applicants, Ozzy and Andrew, you're familiar with the game. Join us when you are able. There you are. Say hi.
Hello again. Ozzy Friedrich, 528 West First Avenue with Radix Design. So I think first I should clarify the situation with the zoning and the setbacks in the proposed design. The proposed design will include a setback encroachment on the First Avenue side, which under, I want to call it the front, but since it's a tandem house building form, it's technically the side setback. And I expect we're probably going to be going to the zoning board of adjustment for this also because I believe a tandem house is usually supposed to have its own off-street parking spot, which is not a part of this proposal and would not be, appropriate in terms of the site layout and the history of the neighborhood. Now, speaking more generally about the concept of the design here, I mean, I think I mentioned in our last presentation that the idea is to recall the original and kind of keep the place that it has in the neighborhood's memory. So the new proposal, while slightly adjusting height, width here and there, is basically replicating the original square footage and massing of the accessory structure that was there originally. I think we felt a wish to honor the history of the storefront and of the previous accessory structure being something that is fluidly moved between commercial and residential uses. So the proposal includes something that recalls the storefront windows that were cut into the front facade of the accessory structure. Our thinking is that we would treat those all as windows, though, without a front door, because it's signaling commercial use enough that we wouldn't want somebody walking in off the street thinking that they could, buy an ice cream sandwich there. I think we'll probably talk about this more in the phase 2 proposal, but we've wanted to give some careful thought to, while recalling the original, also making it clear that this structure is of its own time and is not, in fact, a 130-year-old building. So some of the touches that we intend to use to do that would be to use a crisp contemporary brick, shown as gray here. There may be other options we look at as we go forward. And also to use more of a contemporary detailing on that storefront window. So that this doesn't read as being a historic structure, but instead as a recollection of the historic structure. And yeah, we hope that you will approve. I think that this will, if approved, we can make this a really nice place for a family to live and kind of bring some life back to this particular spot on West First Avenue. Andrew, did you want to add any?
No, I think you covered it all. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicants?
Just
Larry?
have one question. Yeah, I'm curious with that north setback. What's the reason for having any setback at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we wanted to have it at least a foot off of the property line, with future sidewalk maintenance being a consideration, and if we were to look at having something like a stoop along the front of it, I think zoning would say that needs to be a foot off the property line too.
Thank you.
Erica has a question.
With the rear portion that's evoking that original addition to the original building, I can see that the roof is, the peak is clipped, and to keep it lower, and I know it's set back on the sides, but is the roof plane? Is it one continuous plane from front to back?
Yes, the proposal is that the 45-degree sloping roof planes are continuous front to back. We thought of, I think the idea here is to express some subordination between the part that's recalling the original front and then the part that's more like, the original addition. We looked at doing a full step down at the roof there, but the ceiling height upstairs is quite limited. So if you were to step down there and to have enough of an offset for waterproofing, it's at the point where there's not enough height left there for it to be an inhabitable space. So the clipped roof is kind of the gesture of subordination there along with the inward step.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Candace?
I have a question about moving the front door. So on East First Avenue, are there other residential dwellings that have front doors on First Avenue?
So I think the most typical pattern in the neighborhood is that the front door is off the front facing the street. There are examples of other properties in the historic district where the entry is was moved to the side at a point in the structure's history. I can think of one in particular right now, though I'm not remembering its address.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll move on to see if there are any people from the public that have questions. If you're joining by phone, dial 9 on your phone keypad to raise your hand or email landmark@gov.org. You're in Zoom, just give this little hand raise button. Do we have anyone? No one commenting? All right, for the record, no one is raising their hand to make a public comment. So staff, do you have anything else to share?
I do, so for accessory structures, there is a mix of where the front door faces in the Baker neighborhood. Again, this really has to do with the unique layout of the Baker neighborhood. This is one of the few neighborhoods where accessory structures do take advantage of street frontage, but that's not always the case. Staff didn't feel that it was significant enough change with the kind of hinting of the front door, that we had major concerns over it.
Okay, can I ask you a question? So I'm looking at the Sanborn map. And it looks like the block that is, this is facing north, the block that is to the west has 4 dwellings. And it looks from this as if they all have front doors on East First Avenue. So even though I understand this is an accessory dwelling in terms of the actual street itself, there are front doors on that street.
Yes, again, that has to do with Baker's unique layout where you don't necessarily just have houses that front onto the north-south streets. You have them fronting onto the east-west as well. It varies block to block. It really is, like, in terms of layouts of historic districts, one of the most unique in terms of primary streets aren't one thing or the other in this district. And then I did have one more point. So with the modernizing zoning code amendment that was adopted by city council, we can administratively adjust for that setback along West First Avenue. We could look at that in more detail as a phase 2 submittal, as this does have to come back to the commission. It's not clearly identified in the current packet. We could not administratively adjust though for the parking spot because that's a use related thing that we cannot purview over.
Great. Any other questions? It sounds like it. Since there weren't any public comments, then let's go ahead and deliberate, commissioners. What are your thoughts?
I can start.
Great, thanks.
Generally, I think, good job, doing your best to adhere to the guidelines. I like the structure, I like the design, and I think it's in keeping with, as you say, the ghost of the former structure. So, I agree with staff and support, this application.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with from a mass formation context standpoint, I think this is very successful in terms of meeting the guidelines. And I guess address the question I think Ann brought up. I also am not particularly concerned about changing the location of the front door, given how close that is to the street. I think having the ability to kind of put curtains on that and have a bit of distance, I think there's a good case for that. I do have kind of one friendly comment to make for the applicants moving into the details phase, is that in terms of the kind of ghost concept, it appears to me from looking at what is shown here so far that maybe some of the details are possibly overly replicative. I think that will be part of the discussion we have as a commission. And I guess me, for one, I would be comfortable with kind of not trying to suggest maybe that this structure does literally have elements of the history of the previous structure. Clarifying that through the details.
Very, thank you. George?
I think the handling of recalling and yet making use of the storefront and the window location. Very creative and taking a leap to move the front door. And we still have this, so you can tell it was at one time. There was a store there, not that this building was a store, and that is what really does it for me as far as the recall and yet the modern use. Nicely done, guys. I can support this.
Great, thanks, George. Eric is deep in thought.
Yeah, I agree with the, as Larry framed it, at this point, this phase one. I will be interested to see kind of more of the details. But I do agree that I think this is, it's clearly subordinate to the main building too, which I know because this is a ghost or a recollection of the accessory or the original building that was there, that kind of follows. But I just think it's important to point out that that's part of what we're looking at here that makes this work. So I agree, and I would support this application at this point.
Thank you, Erica.
I mean, I agree in general. I find the window that it's the ghost of the old door to be quite odd, because it's really not honoring the old door. If you wanted to honor the old door, you would put the old door back there. And I find it to be sort of, I have to say, slightly gimmicky. And I think, and maybe this is just a friendly comment, I think it would be a stronger ghost if you made that just another window, because there's something really quite strange about. And I'm looking at sort of the guideline 4.2, I think is what it's that it's really to respect. Did I get this right? Not interested. It just seems like the rhythm of the windows is really not an established pattern. Because it's, like I said, it's neither here nor there. It's not really the door, but it's also not really a configuration of window that you would find in other dwellings, I think. I mean, I guess I think it's sort of too bad because East First Avenue looks like a main street to me. And so I'm not quite sure why the front door had to be moved. I mean, I understand. I think everybody's been very convincing, but I'm slightly less convinced. And it's not a deal breaker, but I just think that one window is really sort of odd looking in the in terms of the basic context of the neighborhood.
I was looking at the, what Ann was talking about, you know, the door representing, the window representing the former door is not even in the same position. It's actually offset. It appears to be offset. So, I
think they're both offset, aren't they?
it might be, I mean, but I guess the point here is that if you're going to refer to former opening locations to do it more accurately, but it's not necessary in this case. And so positioning the openings on that facade for balance is probably more important than trying to refer to previous opening locations. That makes sense.
I would just like to insert though that I would hate to see, say, that window opening be short or have two big picture windows on that facade. I think that would be detrimental to the rhythm of openings that we're kind of talking about here. So while I understand the kind of oddity of the window/door, I think at least in this context, it kind of invites like, why is that there? Like, what, there's a story behind this, and what is that story? And I feel like it at least invites some rumination about that, rather than just a, like, here's another new little house that looks different than the surrounding houses.
We better than freaking doorway.
I think also, as I understand the applicant's strategy here, the sort of pattern that is being followed is the historic building that was on site. And so particularly the street facing openings are kind of reflecting what was there. Otherwise, I would say then we would be comparing it to that set of houses that you pointed out and on the other side of the alley in terms of context and pattern. But I think this, to me, this seems like a very appropriate interpretation of what the historic pattern of development of the neighborhood was. So
I think the thing that slightly compounds it for me is where the real front door is tucked way back, you know, onto the side of the site. It's not even on the alley side. And so it's a little bit odd because this is a structure that is on a main street that you can't really tell how you get into it, because the entrance is really way in the back. And that seems like not a typical organization of a little house like this. You should see the house and see the entrance. And so again, I maybe this is just by way of a friendly comment, but the door, it took me a long time actually to figure out where the door was, because I sort of expected to find it at least on the alley side or somewhere where you could see it from the right of way, but it's again, going back to 4.2, it's sort of an unusual organization of elements, I would say, from what I can see in the neighborhood.
I agree with the visibility of the front door. At what point does the applicant bring to us the fencing solution, the security, and what is going to get somebody down that gangway to the front door from First Avenue?
So that is typically reviewed in the phase 2 submittal. It may not be accessible from First Avenue. I don't know. It may be only accessible from the private property. And that is something you do see within the Baker Historic District is that accessory structure is not directly accessible from a primary street. But you do also see ones that are, so.
Yeah, and just not to beat a dead horse here, but relative to the window versus door, as you looked at the survey map for the whole block, the Sanborn map, all of the houses that were to the west that face First Avenue have a setback from the sidewalk and the right of way and probably include front porch. And so this, you know, obviously they can't solve it, the front door in that way and have that same graciousness. So I get the compromise that was made and I think it's a good solution.
Any other further comments? All righty, commissioners, do I hear a motion from the floor?
make a motion. Madam Chair, I move to recommend an administrative adjustment for the bulk plan encroachment to the zoning administrator per section 12.4.5.2B of the Denver zoning code, and to approve application number 2023-COA-142 for phase 1 mass farming context for a new tandem house at 95 Bannock Street as per design guidelines 4.1 through 4.5. 4.7 through 4.8, 4.15, 4.18. Character defining features for the Baker Historic District, presented testimonies, and documentation and information provided in the staff report.
All right, thank you. Wait for a second.
I'll second.
Erica, thank you for seconding. All in favor, aye. All opposed, nay. All right, 2023-COA 142 at 95 Bannock Street has been unanimously approved. The applicants will be working through staff person. Thank you very much. And now we are on to our next design review, which is also in the Baker District, 2023-COA-206 at 360 Bannock Street. And again,
So this is a tandem house conversion. This is an existing structure. We are not going to review this through the two-step process because it is an existing structure. They're simply changing the use and adding addition to this. So while we do typically review tandem houses through the two-step process, this is more a use addressment to comply with the Denver zoning code as this structure is on its own parcel, and you cannot have an accessory structure accessory to something when it's on its own parcel. Hope that all makes sense. But this will be a tandem house. There are minimal changes proposed to the existing structure. The non-historic windows and doors will be replaced. And then the majority of the structure will remain intact. You can see this structure here on the aerial image. It is on its own parcel. That parcel roughly matches the outline that I'm showing in this aerial image here. This is on Bannock Street and does front onto Bannock Street. And is just up the street from the structure we just reviewed. So here is the existing and proposed floor plan. So there will be an addition added to the rear. The addition is inset from the wall plane 6 inches. And the addition will allow for a kitchen space and a bedroom on the upper floor. It is a very small change in the building footprint, as you can see here in this proposal. To accommodate the change in use, the applicant is proposing a new dormer on the south roof slope that you can see here. And then the new addition will also have a forward-facing gable, similar to kind of what we saw in the last project in design. So to add some use to this structure, the applicant is proposing to replace the non-historic plate glass window with a new framed glazing that will have the appearance of a double hung window, but it will be a single framed glazing unit that will give the appearance of 3 double hung windows within that opening. Staff feel that is appropriate because similar to the last structure, this structure has had a history of change of uses from a residential use to a commercial use back to a residential use. So we do feel that this is preserving some of that history of that structure. The existing front door will remain oriented towards Bannock Street. However, the non-historic door will be replaced with a new full white door with 2 panels below. That door design is similar to doors that you see within the Baker Historic District. And then in the gable face, a larger window will be installed in the opening to provide egress, and that window does have a double appearance. At the rear, that new addition will be a gable on side gable addition, which you can kind of see in this elevation here. So the biggest changes again to the rear, as there will be a rear addition. It is subordinate. This structure also violates the bulk plane for this district. There is a violation in the front along Bannock Street, in the rear that the structure is violating the bulk plane. One is an existing, and that is the largest violation to the bulk plane. So this is an existing violation, and then here is the proposed violation. This structure also violates the side setback, but it's not clear to staff if that side setback violation is for the existing structure or for the new addition. It does look like it would be for the existing structure, so we could administratively adjust that as well. However, that would need to be shown clearly in plan. And I do not have specific details on that now, so that can return at a later date for commission review. So along the south elevation, there are minimal alterations proposed, primarily that dormer on the south roof slope. This dormer will be a gable profile dormer, but it will be fully clad with glazing to allow maximum light into that space. It is set back from the front facade, and it is minimal in nature, so it does not visually overwhelm the existing roof structure. There will also be a new door along the south elevation for the structure. And then the majority of changes occur along the north elevation. An existing window will be converted into a French door opening. And then you see that new addition with that also new entrance into this new town house here. That has that gable face on it. So the proposed tandem house is going to be clad in stucco as it is now. So there's no changes to the material cladding. The new addition will be clad in stucco as well. Staff are asking that the thickness of the stucco be confirmed, as we do require a stucco thickness of at least 7/8 of an inch. On the Bannock Street facade, the existing gable face material will remain intact. However, it's unclear to staff what the profile of the shingle is on the rear for that new gable face. They're just asking for confirmation of that shingle reveal, and it should be 4 to 6 inches or match that of the existing on the rear of this structure. All windows do need to be inset 2 inches into the wall plane, so that will be information that should be added to the submittal materials. And then I'm sure this structure will have mechanical, so we just need those mechanical units confirmed and planned. And it's likely that the applicant didn't include these in the initial submittal, as I had so many projects, I wasn't thinking clearly that we could review this through the one-step process. That's all I got.
All right, any questions for Brittany? No, all right. Do we have our applicant, Taylor?
Same people.
Oh, okay. We do. Hello again, gentlemen. We do.
Once more, yes, and I think it's Andrew's very strange luck. I don't know if it's good or bad luck to own more than one of these in the neighborhood, but we've been privileged to work with Andrew on both. This is at the rear of, I think as Brittany mentioned, it's been parceled off separately from what was originally its primary structure. And city records actually currently show this as being industrial warehouse use. Apparently the most recent owner was using it to store paint for their paint business. And all of this was a surprise to me because you walk by on the street and it looks like a place where people are living and like looks kind of like that's what it should be. As Brittany mentioned, it did originally have commercial uses, and some of our research in the city directory actually shows that it possibly had proprietors living upstairs, since it was shown as being a store and inhabited residence at the same time. Then I think I want to note that the addition at the rear, the footprint of that addition matches an addition that appears in the 1929 Sanborn Atlas, where there was a one-story addition in that footprint at the back of this property. I think, yeah, hopefully this is, simpler and more straightforward all around. I should clarify that at the front or at the side facing Bannock Street, this structure actually does encroach a few inches into the right of way as well. But it does not have the kind of unique combination of challenges that the last property we looked at, where we will be walking into that encroachment process and seeing how it goes, and hopefully not having to come back to you because this is still set back a ways off the sidewalk and is a little bit above the right of way as well with that 3-step front stoop. Let's see, I'm not sure what else to point out here. I mean, I think that this will feel very much like it does in the neighborhood now once it's done. It'll just be, a dwelling that's been preserved and brought into a modern day use. Andrew, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think the only thing to add, again, Andrew Johnson, 419 Franklin, on the north elevation, that is all enclosed in a fence, so it won't be visible from the street as it stands now. And then on the south elevation, it's kind of an abandoned alley or a vacated alley, and you won't be able to see that back entrance very clearly either. So I figured I thought that might be important to point out. That's it.
Okay, gentlemen, again, thank you, commissioners.
Thanks.
any questions? No, I see no questions, so again, well done. Alrighty, so on to public comments. If you're joining by phone, dial 9 on your phone keypad to raise your hand or email landmark@denvergov.org. Or if you're on Zoom, just hit that little hand thingy and we'll get you going. Are there any hands raised? There are no hands raised, so technically there are no public comments, so let us move on. Staff, do you have anything else to say about it?
We did refer this to the Baker Arno and they did recommend approval to the commission.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Brittany. All right, commissioners. Let's go into deliberation. What are your thoughts?
Start again.
Awesome.
As with the last one, I think that this is a responsible approach to the guidelines and I support the application.
Yeah,
as they
thank you.
stood.
Thank you. Nick. Anybody else?
Agreed.
I have a question about what other commissioners think about, the addition is recessed slightly from the original building, but the roof is not. On the last project, it made sense for the roof planes to be continuous because it's an old building. Here, I'm wondering if there's a concern that by not offsetting the roof, where the addition is being represented in a way that's less desirable. I understand the reason for a simple roof line, and I support the simple roof lines. I'm just wondering what other commissioners think about not offsetting the roof while offsetting the addition. Or if there's some other way to express the difference between the new roof, the roof on the addition, and the roof on the existing building.
Go ahead.
I would just say that at least on the north side with the cross gable that we get that's there, that for me, that kind of minimizes that concern. And then we have that newer dormer that's larger and, fully glazed. That it isn't right at that roof. It isn't at that line, I don't think. But it's, I don't know, it seems to break it up enough that I guess I'm just trying to say it doesn't overly concern me.
There is guideline 3.4, which is in the staff report, that says differentiate an addition from the original structure with an offset of at least 4 inches. And it doesn't mention whether that is, we're talking about the vertical or the horizontal plane. So from that point of view, you could say, to follow up on, follow up on what Gary is saying, is that the roof should be offset. If you think 3.4 is actually also referring to the roof.
I think the staff, we've always interpreted it as the footprint. I will say I have always been a proponent of setting the roof down. However, I've had several additions come to the commission in which you guys did not require that. So I didn't point it out in this particular submittal. So feel free to discuss.
Well, I'm trying to make sense of the drawings, and it's not, if the roof planes were continuous like they're shown, but the overhang on the overhang on the non-cross gable elevation was so that the eave actually was offset. I think that would be enough of a move. It's not clear that that's what's being shown. But there is on one of the drawings, there's a little line that might imply would be the It's like the south elevation, there's a line that might imply that the overhang is the same on the original building as it is on the addition, which would imply that there's an offset in the, which would be, I think, enough of a gesture.
Where do you see that? I'm not.
It's drawing 14. So it might be sheet 14 on page 14. It's the south elevation. There's
Oh, I
a
see.
slight, well, there's two ticks.
Because the proposed roof plan does not show that.
Yeah, so it's kind of ambiguous. I think. I think it's a minor detail, but I think it is one that would help make the addition read as an addition.
Yeah, the southwest perspective on sheet 18 shows a continuous
Yeah.
line. And yeah, I agree. I don't necessarily think that the heights need to
Yeah.
change, but that setback I think would be helpful. I guess the question is, yeah, I guess we pointed out a guideline that it doesn't. You could argue it doesn't. So,
Architecturally, I will just say that I kind of like it the way it's presented. It is simple. It's a little more of a contemporary interpretation of what an expansion would be within the historic district, but in my mind, one that's acceptable.
Thank you, Gary.
Apparently, we don't all agree, so
yeah, I'm really curious to hear other people's.
we're disagreement over this detail to be. So. I'm not gonna object to the way it's shown, but if the architect decides to make the gesture in his final plans, I wouldn't object to that.
So you've made a friendly comment. All right, okay. Commissioners, if there aren't any other discussions,
I can make the motion
that would be great.
unless there.
Go for it.
Madam Chair, I move to recommend an administrative adjustment for the bulk claim encroachment to the zoning administrator per section 12.4.5.2B of the Denver zoning code and to approve the application number 2023-COA-206 for the rear addition, dormer addition, and window and door alterations for a tandem house conversion at 360 Bannock Street. As per design guidelines 2.28, 3.1, 3.4, 3.6, 3.7. Character defining features for the Baker Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. 1, confirm the thickness of the stucco and reveal of the shingles. 2, inset windows at least 2 inches into the wall plane or match the inset of the existing windows. And 3, confirm HVAC location in plan.
And thank you, George has seconded. All in favor of the motion?
Hi.
Opposed? All right, gentlemen, unanimously approved. You heard the friendly comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, y'all are off the hook for the rest of the afternoon, I think. All right, then we will move on to our next design review project, which is 2023-COA-207 at 3021 California Street in Curtis Park. And I know you'll be surprised that our staff person is Brittany.
So our next project is for a new phase 1 mass forming context at 3021 California Street. This will be the new building address. It currently, I believe, is still addressed 3025 California Street, but it will be addressed 3021 California Street. So on December 6, 2022, the commission approved the demolition of the existing garage structure that you see in this aerial image here, which was associated with 3025 California Street, and a zone lot amendment to allow for the development of this lot. Historically, there was a single family residence on this property, and it was a sister house to both 3015 California Street and 3025. So the proposed structure is for a new single-family residence with a detached garage structure. The primary structure is 2 stories in height, and it is a hip-on gable roof form to reference some of the roof forms that are found on this block in the surrounding historic context. Initially, the applicant was proposing a Italianate structure. However, there are very few Italianate structures on this block, so staff did encourage a restudy of the form. There are about, I think, 3, including the Dr. Justina Ford House, which actually was moved onto this block, so it is not original, but there are some Italianate, but we felt to honor the history of the prior structure and the development patterns, a different roof form would be more appropriate. And then the detached garage is just a simple hipped roof garage. So the overall building footprint for this structure is 23 feet 7 inches, and then it's 56 feet 2 inches deep on the lot, and it is 28 feet tall. The proposed garage is 25 feet by 21 feet and 17 feet tall. So in terms of the placement on the block, it is in alignment with the adjacent properties, which you can see here generally are setback from the public right of way. There is these structures here that have less of a setback, but generally speaking, the setback aligns with the adjacent property, and will honor that placement on the site. Here is the proposed footprint. The structure will have a central entrance with a partial width side porch and projecting structure at the front. It will have an egress window on the front, so we will need to look at that closely in the design detail phase of this middle. It does have a basement, ground floor, and upper floor floor plan. Again, here is that proposed roof structure, mimicking some of the roof forms found in the surrounding historic context, which I do have images of to show you later. So here's the proposed structure. Generally speaking, it is simple in design. The proposed structure is centered on the lot with 3 feet side interior setbacks. Proposal will have a significant amount of depth, but it is all within the front 65 of the lot, and the development is typical of the surrounding historic context. The proposed structure will be set back from the property line and will feature a partial width porch on the south side of the facade. It is uniform setback on this block. There is a 1.5 inch raised foundation proposed, and floor to floor heights are typical of the surrounding historic context, in which the ground floor is a little bit taller than the second floor. Structures within the Curtis Park Historic District are generally very tall in nature and often violate the height and bulk plane for this district. This structure will again violate the bulk plane, but not the max height. The roof form was restudied by recommendation of staff, and we do feel that this roof form is appropriate, and the encroachment into the bulk plane is appropriate as well. Here is the north elevation. The structure does have simple openings that are a little bit wider than they are tall, which is typically what you see with the Curtis Park is tall, narrow window openings. However, as these are on secondary facades, they'll have minimal visibility. Additionally, the 2 sister houses that sit at 3015 to 3025, they actually have wider windows than taller windows. They have more of a classical architectural vocabulary. So we do feel that this is fitting in with this block in terms of the window openings portions. On the south elevation, there is this larger window proposed for the stairwell. Staff did have some concerns over this window opening. However, the applicant has set it back significantly from the front facade, and they would like additional light in this space. The commission has approved some of these larger openings for stairwell with windows within the Curtis Park Historic District. It does have tall, narrow portions, which you do see in Curtis Park. So again, here is the proposed structure in the block context. The original structure was a sister house to 3015 and 3025 California Street, which you can see have a little bit more classical detailing than something you typically see in the Curtis Park Historic District. Both have partial width porches located on the south side of the property and more centrally located entrances. So we do feel that there are parts of this building form that are indicating the original structure while remaining identifiable of its time. And in terms of how it fits in with the surrounding historic context. So there are a few of these hip roofs within the Curtis Park Historic District that are truncated in nature and don't come up all the way to a full pyramidal point. They are typically one-story structures. The applicant here has put in 2 on Stout Street. But there are several just north of this property with this building form. And then 2921 Stout Street has a similar building form. And this is a historic structure within the Curtis Park Historic District. So while this is not a roof form that we typically see for Curtis Park, we do see a lot of Italianates in Curtis Park. We do feel that is appropriate for the district and does contribute to the variety of development patterns that you see within Curtis Park. And it's kind of nice to see just a different roof form for Curtis Park. So we are recommending approval of the phase 1 mass form and context for this site, as we do feel that it is compatible with the surrounding historic context, and are also recommending approval of the administrative adjustment for the bulk plan encroachment.
Brittany, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for? I don't see any. Okay, great. Do we have our applicant with us today? Not there?
Dawn is.
Oh, oh,
Are you the other one?
Yeah.
But Don's gonna present.
Okay. Dawn, you should turn your camera on now. Might have time.
Okay, I am here. I'm trying to figure out the camera situation.
Big homeowner here in the room now. You 10 minutes to talk about your project. And please begin the presentation with your name and your address for our records.
Oh, here we go. Now we have the video. Hi. I just wanted to add a few things on in addition to what Brittany already brought up. You know, we worked with the staff. She mentioned that we started out with the Italianate form. We worked kind of back and forth with Brittany trying to figure out some massing and roof the structure to kind of fit more with the context of the neighborhood within Baker. We feel like we found kind of a happy spot that fits into the context with the block as well as the neighborhood, with our kind of massing, the building form, the roof line, as far as and in addition to some other details. We like that gable end on the front. We feel like it plays off some of the neighboring houses. If you look at page 20, it was the, let's see, compatible, I forget the name of the sheet, but compatibility demonstration sheet, yes. We just felt like these neighboring residences really showed that centralized front door, the gable end, at the front, kind of splitting up the massing so it was less symmetrical, more asymmetrical, to fit in with these other neighboring structures. So we also felt like it was really important to get a little bit of a higher roof line to go with this massing form. So we have the 10-foot ceiling heights on the first floor, 9 foot on the second floor, with a 12-12 pitch there at the front. And so we decreased the slope of the roof there in the back. so that we could give this look of the steeper roof line, which seems to be more in line with that style. Of this house. So that was important to us, and that's why we're asking for that adjustment for the 1'11", an additional height there at the boat plane, but not overall. Let's see. The windows on the side of the house, I just wanted to point out that they aren't very visible at all. From the very front facade, they are 17 feet, 8 inches back. And it would be the other side, yes. So from the very front elevation, that front setback line, those windows start at 17 feet, 8 inches back. And from that facade where the front door is, it's still 11 foot, 8 inches back. And so we tried to locate them just past the break line of that brick as well. So it seemed like a logical point. But we really don't feel like they're very visible. The majority of the windows on the house are 2'6" by 5'6" on the second floor and 2'6" by 6 feet on the ground floor. Those two side windows are 2'6" by 9 feet. So while they are significant, they are larger. We don't feel like it's as significant as some of the larger stairway windows that you see around. But it would be nice to get that additional light in on that side of the house, given that this is a narrower lot. So let's see. I believe that's really all I have to contribute in addition to what Brittany brought up, but we're hoping that it's in a good place and we don't have many additional details that you're requesting. So I guess that would be it.
Okay, great. And you wish to please.
Oh, my name's Andrew Arata, 1836 South Marion. I actually lived 3 blocks exactly from California Street. We built 9 years ago at 2725 California Street. But we've since moved down to DU, so coming back really close to where we first built. The only comment I'm going to add is we will not have waterproofing details because there are several of the DHA lots, or 2 that I know of that I walked, that have terrible waterproofing details, but we won't have them. I think I'm never going to do fluid apply and recessed windows for the siding because I have seen that like needing water or something. Do not plan on the problem.
All right. Thank you very much.
Can I add one thing? I'm sorry.
No, of course.
I may have misheard this whenever Brittany was presenting, but I believe she said that there was an egress window on the front of the house that we'd need to address. There isn't actually. There's one at the rear of the property, and then there's 3 at the side. So
Okay.
I don't know if I misheard that or not, but I just wanted to point that out, that this one that you see down at the bottom of the sheet, that's at the back of the property,
All
or the
right.
back of the house.
All right, commissioners, do you have questions for the applicants? Larry? No? Nick?
Yeah, you talked a little bit about the stair window and its oversized proportion. And I'm not the window expert on the commission, but to me, just visually, it appears more like sliding glass door proportion than a window to an open stair proportion. And so I found it a little confusing. But that's just a comment, a question for my fellow commissioners when we go into discussion.
Any other questions for the applicants? Okay. All righty, thank you very much. Thank you. Then we will move on to the public comment for this project. If you're joining by phone, dial 9 on your phone keypad, raise your hand or email landmark@denvergov.org. With your name and phone number, if you're on your computer, you can just press on the little hand and you'll be able to raise your hand. In a moment, Taylor. Keith, you should be allowed to unmute now. All right.
Great. Keith Pryor, 2418 Champa Street, Chair of the Curtis Park Design Review Committee. We did review this. We had gone back and forth as well with Brittany as they were evolving this design between the Italianate and this more Queen Anne / vernacular. We really like the roof line. Like Brittany says, this is a roof line that's found in the district, but it's not used more currently in a lot of the designs that you're seeing. But throughout the Curtis Park District, you'll find this hipped roof with the Queen Anne pitch on the front. And it's a really good design that fits well with the district. The windows on the front are great. The central entryway, if you look on that block, there's quite a few that actually have the central entryway. And so that is a very common Curtis Park element as well. We do have a variety of different ways and where the doors land, but a central entrance is something that is found in the district. And so overall, we really appreciate this design and we like working with this client. And we do encourage the commission to approve it. The side window, I definitely understand the commissioner's concern that it looks like a sliding glass door. We do have very tall, narrow windows, and it is on the side, and we felt that it was not visible. And we do allow for a little bit more variations on side windows that are properly set back and not visible from the street, given our narrow lots. So we are in support of this mass and scale and encourage the commissioners to approve it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Keith. Do we have anybody else, Taylor?
No other hands raised.
No other hands raised. All right, would the staff like to give you further comments?
The commission, I don't think the specific commission, but the commission has approved these larger stairwell windows for properties within Curtis Park. And I know some that are on corner properties where that larger window is very visible. So I just wanted to note that it's not unusual to see that. You know, you may want to discuss if these particular proportions are appropriate based on the comments I've already heard.
Right. Commissioners, any questions?
It's just the kind of question about scope for mass form and context. It's really the opening proportions that we're concerned about, and then details would be what's in
What the window actually is. Yeah. So that could also be helpful comments for the windows.
Yeah.
All right. Is that it for staff? Are we ready to deliberate? Then let us do so. What are your thoughts?
I
Larry?
guess since I just brought this up, well, I guess, so overall, I also agree with the staff report and with the RNO that mass form and context. I think this is meets the guidelines. I think, yeah, the big question being this large stairwell window. I don't have any problem with its overall opening proportion. I just think that if it could become either double hung or have a simulated divided light to bring up the vertical height of it, it would still, each of the glass panes would still be very vertical in proportion. And it would feel more window-like and less, to Nick's point, sliding door-like.
Just want to say something about that. I think the representation of it is incorrect because I'm looking at the southwest elevation. The southwest elevation appears from the roof line as if the brick portion is forward of the siding, and actually it's back. It's recessed back. And so there's something, if you look at the plan, there's something, unless I'm misunderstanding this, it's not quite correct in the representation. And it's one of the reasons, I mean, actually, when I first looked at it, I assumed the stair was in the tower, but actually it's not. The tower is the loft, which is pushed back. And I think maybe, and this is a side elevation, so I am not overly concerned about it. It's just that it's a little bit of a misrepresentation of what's actually going on. Where usually normally that big window would be in the tower, which would be the stairwell, instead of something which is the roof. I don't think that the roof line could possibly look as it is represented here if that front plane is pushed back. It's just a minor thing that can be corrected.
It is a bit odd to have a siding on a surface that projects forward of a brick clad surface.
I had exactly.
And it resulted in kind of an odd looking detail as well. I don't know if the suggestion is to change the footprint so that the brick projects ahead of the siding or not, but it is I don't know if that was intended or if it's attracting here. But it is an awkward, it's an awkward condition. Regarding the windows, not sure. I'm good with the proportion, the opening proportion,
No, actually.
but I'm not sure making them appear as double hung is the right approach, because they would look like tremendously overscaled double hung windows, which would be inconsistent with the rest of the windows. And perhaps these windows need to be divided into 3 pieces, top to bottom, rather than 2. But it's something that the architect can work with.
George? Erica?
I don't have any additional comments other than here's to be guidelines and I like it better than Italian.
All right. Like is not in our curtain.
I know.
Erica?
I would really just be repeating, but I thank the staff for sticking with pushing them towards something not Italianate in this immediate context. I think it works better. And I agree with overall comments of the stairwell window that, you know, when it comes to the next phase, further detailing of that window, I think will help a lot.
Yeah.
I have a quick question regarding a friendly comment about details, but just wanting to see if there's any historical precedent for us. This appears to show what I think are colloquially called pork chop eave ends on the gable end. Is that something that we would have any purview to say that is not a good detail, since it's not historically very textual? Okay.
And it's not something that we would necessarily look at today, but I
Yeah.
think it's a good friendly comment for
Okay.
the design details.
So if it wasn't clear, I guess my comment is that I think something, an alternative to these pork chop eave details at the gable end on the front facade would be preferable.
And the friendly
Comment.
supported for the next piece. All right, Commissioners, anything else? Oh, actually, not, sorry. You'll have plenty of time to work with the landmark staff afterwards, so. All right, Commissioners, is there a motion on the floor?
I can make the motion.
Erica, thank you.
I move to approve application number 2023-COA-207 for the Phase 1 mass form and context at 3021 California Street as per design guidelines 4.1 through 4.6, 4.8, 4.15, 4.18, 4.19, character defining features for the Curtis Park Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Erica, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Larry, that's seconded. All right, let's take a vote. All in favor, aye? All opposed, nay? All right, you have unanimously been approved for Phase 1 mass form and context. And y'all can make it the landmark staff and explain over. And well, neighbors, for this, there's actually, I could throw a rock into those windows. All right, there's normally we take a little break at 3 o'clock. Would people like to take a little break? We've got 2 more I see a couple of nodding heads. Let's take a break for 5 minutes. Meet back here in 10. All right. Will you mute us and pause the recording? if you like? Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Tia. Welcome back, everybody. We're ready to begin. We have 2 more design review projects. The first is 2023-COA-208 at 3225 Newton Street in Packards Hill. And our staff person is Brittany Bryan.
So we're now looking at an accessory dwelling unit for a contributing structure in the Packards Hill Historic District. Here you can see a image of that contributing structure. It is a Denver square with a hipped roof and a dormer on the forward facing roof slope. The aerial image here shows the location of the proposed ADU. It is a bit difficult to see in this aerial image, but a contributing non-historic garage will be demolished to accommodate this ADU. So here is that proposed garage to be demolished, and here is that existing site plan. So the commission has reviewed an accessory dwelling unit structure at this site previously 2 times. The first submittal was in June of 2022, and the commission had concerns that the proposal was too much programming for the site. So at the time, the applicant was proposing to not demolish the existing garage structure and construct a new accessory dwelling unit adjacent to the garage on the south side of the site. The commission again expressed concern over programming at the site and also the roof form of the proposed accessory dwelling unit, which was a gable roof structure. Then in January of 2023, the applicant returned with a similar programming with the garage still intact and an accessory dwelling unit on the south side of the site. However, minor revisions had been made to the overall form to have a hitch roof form to better match the primary structure and some design details that felt more similar to the primary structure. So staff did actually recommend approval of that submittal. However, the commission still expressed concern over the overall form and programming for the site and ultimately denied that request. So now the applicant is back with a submittal that involves demolition of this garage structure. So here is the proposed accessory dwelling unit. So the proposed accessory dwelling unit will be 24 feet in height and will have a footprint of 25 feet 5 1/4 inch by 35 feet 5 inches. So this footprint is very similar to what the commission saw previously. The major difference is the placement and orientation on the site. So this will be wide along the alley when the prior submittal had significant depth along the north-south property lines. And again, that garage is now demolished. It does allow for much of the accessory dwelling unit massing to be placed behind the primary structure. However, some of the accessory dwelling unit will be visible on the north and south side of the site. So you can see these red lines in the site plan image are showing the accessory dwelling unit alignment with the primary structure. In terms of the footprint, the proposed accessory dwelling unit is 842 square feet. And the existing single family dwelling unit is 803 square feet. So the overall footprint is similar to what the commission saw previously. And the commission did express concern over the size of this footprint, but the commission also stated that it might be possible to do a programming this large if the number of structures on the site was reduced to 1. So that is what the applicant has proposed today. Staff are still concerned about the general programming of this accessory dwelling unit. It will be for a 2-car garage. And then on the south side of the site, on the ground floor, there is a storage kind of common area, entry space, a full bathroom and staircase. Staff are particularly concerned about the programming, as the south side of this is going to be the most visible, and that's where the programming does feel a little maybe not subordinate to the primary structure, and also where the roof form does feature a number of ships and wall plane that will be visible from the public right away. So we do have some concerns over the general programming and subordination of this accessory dwelling unit to the primary structure. In terms of the roof form, it is a somewhat complex roof form, particularly when compared to the primary structure, which is a simple hip with a dormer on the street facing roof slope. So this is a hipped roof with a projecting gable portion on the east side of the structure. And that is to accommodate a larger vehicle, as you can see in the first floor print. And then that storage space, entry space is limited to the ground floor. But to enlarge the kitchen a little bit more, there is a cross gable form also proposed on that hip. So again, complex roof form as compared to the primary structure. So here is the east and west elevations of the proposed ADU. The west elevation does face onto the alley and will have the garage access. This side of the ADU is proposed to be clad in lap siding. And the windows here will be casement windows on the second floor to allow for egress, and then a double hung window on the ground floor. On the east elevation, you can see that projecting gable that I mentioned, and that is again to accommodate a larger truck. The windows on this elevation are double hung, and this elevation has brick cladding on the ground floor and lap siding on the upper floors. The applicant did simplify the roof form a bit over the porch entry to just have the one slope. But again, this is where that roof form is visible from the public right of way, and it's where this ADU has the most complexity. So staff do have some concerns over that. But generally speaking, staff did work with the applicant to improve the symmetry on this facade and make some adjustments to the design. Here are the north and south elevations. So the north elevation is fairly simple. The brick on the ground floor wraps back on this facade for a bit, and then it transitions into lap siding. The roof eave for the ground floor continues around and wraps around, allowing for separation and division between the ground floor and the upper floor, and then simple double hung windows on the north elevation on the second floor. On the south elevation, again, you can see that complex roof form that is caused by the need for head height for that stair that is in that space. And then also the kitchen bump out that is on the second floor. On this elevation, we have a double hung window, a casement window, and a slider door. Staff are very concerned about the south elevation as it's going to be visible from the public right of way, and again has that increased complexity and roof design. When you compare it to the primary structure, as you can see in this image, which is showing the primary structure. That applicant has done their best to place the massing behind the primary structure. So here are some various views with the red outline showing the visibility of that ADU. As you move around the property, there is an existing tree on the south side of the site that will provide some coverage for that ADU. However, the commission should review the ADU as if that tree is not there, because it may not be there in a few years and that is not within our purview. There is a fence in place that will additionally provide some more screening for that ADU. And as you move around the site and walk along the sidewalk, portions of the ADU will disappear behind the primary structure. However, generally speaking, staff are very concerned that this form is not appropriate for the Packards Hill Historic District and is not representative of the accessory structures that you would see in the Packards Hill Historic District. So while we feel like the applicant did make a number of improvements to this design. The overall form is not contextual to the Packersville Historic District. And therefore are recommending denial of the submittal at this time. Just because we have concerns over its relationship to the primary structure, the surrounding historic context, and the overall programming of the structure and how that programming affects the exterior expression of the structure.
Thank you, Brittany. Commissioners, do you have any questions? So like it, Brittany. Taylor, do we have the applicant with us?
Robin, you should be able to turn your camera on and unmute now.
Hello?
I'm getting my camera here.
Okay, well, we can hear you. That's a good start.
There we go. I don't need to see me anyhow, but in any case.
Hi.
Hello. So my
Go
name is
ahead.
Robin
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, yeah, I got 10 minutes. My name is Robin Adams with ArcWest Architects, and I'm here to present our Newton Street ADU for the third time, as you know. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. So we appreciate Brittany's report and we understand her position for that, but I guess I would like to talk through basically intents of our design that make it compatible with the neighborhood. So based on the design guidelines. First, our proposed ADU can be recognized as current construction and generally neutral with the simple building forms and detailing. The form of the ADU was masked in a way that the second story shifts back from the main level. And this was intentional to reduce the scale as opposed to a straight formed salt box. And so this setback has a small roof that establishes a taller portion for the main level. And then the second floor thereby has a smaller proportion. And then the roof mass is equal to that second level proportion. And that kind of breakdown of the elevation is characteristic of homes in the district and the neighborhood, as you can see with the existing, the taller main level, shorter upper level, and then the roof. We would have liked to have a slightly steeper roof form, but to match the existing. But with the height restrictions, we really couldn't. The main roof of the ADU is hip, similar in style to the slope of the existing. We do have some bump outs that we thought added interest and character. But the exception is that gable bump out that she mentioned to the east, which follows the function of the plan layout. But again, we believe this articulation reduces the apparent scale of the building. So she also mentioned the two red lines. The ADU two-story building form has been purposely located so it sits directly behind the house, making it more subordinate. The most visible portion of the ADU is really only the single story. And so, yeah, there might be some complexity in that roof form where the kitchen bumps out, but really the only section of the ADU that you can see from the street, if you're standing in front, is that single story. And that was with intent. I mean, that was by design. And so also along with that, the entrance to the ADU is within that single story, which is in context and part of the guidelines in terms of having that face the main street. The ADU proposed height is below the max height for zoning and is 3 feet lower than the existing primary home, making the ADU subordinate in height. The location of the ADU maintains open space in the backyard, consistent with neighborhood building placements, as well as extra space along the south side. So we feel like we're, preserving that character of open space and open land. Overall, the footprint of our ADU is 842. The house, if you include the porch, is actually 951. Porch is 148 square feet. The building footprint is 804, so, the reasonable footprint is slightly smaller. The window proportions and geometry are like those within the existing primary home. Double hung windows are proposed for the walls facing the street. As Brittany noted, the exception are the slider windows facing the alley. But if the commission were to ask us to make an adjustment to that for the approval on condition, we would be more than happy to oblige. The proposed materials will be a combination of brick on public facing elevations at main level to relate to the principal materials of the primary structure. And then for economy and simplicity, the remainder of the building will be clad in horizontal 4-inch siding. Again, we could go to a simple horizontal siding throughout, if that's the commissioner's viewpoint. But we thought the dual materials and conversation between the existing brick and the new brick would be a good architectural move. Finally, we look at this as an architectural style that is a simplified Queen Anne Edwardian characteristics, where Queen Anne has that primary building mass, hip roof with projecting pediment bays on the front, and then often has a lower, smaller subordinate massing to the side. Now, definitely an interpretation, it's not a strict one, but the strict interpretation wouldn't really be permitted. And then that's about it.
All right.
I think, yeah, our homeowner might want to say something. I'm not sure if he's online or not, but keep it short and simple. That's really it. So any comments or questions, I'd love to address them.
So I've paused the time while we move Alex over to presenter, but Alex, you have 4 minutes and 37 seconds left, and then we can get into questions if there are any.
Hello, Alex. Hi.
Alex, you should be able to unmute and turn your camera on now.
Oh, there you are. Hi. Yeah, your name and your address. You've got 4 minutes and 37 seconds.
We can't hear you, Alex.
Yeah.
There we go. How about that?
There you go.
All right. So thanks so much for considering our design. We've been at this since 2020 and appreciate all the feedback that we've gotten so far. A couple of things that I wanted to note was that photos that were taken of the property were taken during the winter. So about 9 months out of the year, we have 2 large trees, which are shown in gray on the side here, which completely obscure anything in the backyard. As Robin mentioned, we also have a 6-foot fence around the property, and we're 6 feet elevated above the street level. So for at least 9 months out of the year, you're not going to be able to see anything in the backyard. So that's really the only point that I wanted to make. And I, obviously support Robin and all these decisions that we've made along the way. And, feel that this matches the context of the overall neighborhood.
All right, terrific. Thank you very much, Alex. Commissioners, do you have any questions for our applicants? No questions? Okay, great. All righty. Then let's go on to see if there's anyone from the public who would like to talk. If you're joining us by phone, dial 9 on your phone keypad to raise your hand, or you can email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and information. If you're joining us via computer, just hit on the little hand raise button and raise your hand. No hand raised. Nobody? No. All right. Okay. Cool. No public comments. All right. Thank you. Any staff redirect or any additional comments? Commissioners, do you have any questions for the staff? Okay, great. Then let's go on into deliberation. Commissioners, what are your thoughts, Anne?
Well, I think that there are a lot of very nice things about this, this project, but I think the thing that is making it not subordinate are all the fidgets in it. I think that basically even the massing, even though the massing is large, and I get it, and so forth, but it's all the little bump outs and pop backs, because not only, and I think it's really an unusual choice, given that the primary structure is so completely simple, and that's really what you're being subordinate to. And it's hard to imagine anything simpler than just that box, which is the primary structure. I think that that would be a much better jumping off point than all of these things that are bumping out and pushing back. Because I think also with fewer pop outs and bump outs, you would have a much simpler roof plan. Because I keep looking at the roof plan and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You know, there are about 12 different planes on it, which seems really excessive. And like I said, I think to me, the siting of it, the volume of it could be perfectly acceptable and meet the guidelines if it just was a little bit less fidgety and a little bit more straightforward.
Thank you, Anne. Erica, what do you have?
No, but I'll give it a
No,
shot.
you can't. Sorry.
No, I was preparing my mental
I understand.
thoughts. I agree with Anne. Part of me hesitates a little bit to say, I think I'm still slightly concerned about the overall mass as well. So I'm a little hesitant to say that with removal of these bump outs, that it would be probably okay. But I agree that I think especially design guideline 4.19 in that basically subordination and compatibility with the primary building. While I know the applicant said this in a effort to show, you know, their thought process, and which I appreciate, but the comment of you know, this building kind of reflecting or pointing towards Queen Anne and other styles, I think is telling in that, but that's not what the primary building is, and which goes back to what Anne was bringing up of just the simplicity of that Denver Square. And so, yeah, I agree with the staff report, and I think it should be denied at this point.
All right, Eric, thank you.
I have to support. Oh, okay.
We have time for everybody.
Just really quickly, I have to support staff's and the applicant's perseverance in trying to get what they want out of the ADU, but again, the trees are not permanent. And as a passerby on here, just seeing the 6-foot fence, you would wonder who is subordinate to who on looking at these structures. They've got it in and they should try it again, because I just don't see subordination. I see a jangling of simplicity versus complexity. And trees are nice, they can cover up a lot, but they fall down. So I would have to support staff here.
Larry.
Yeah, so yeah, I agree with what others have said about the complexity and what staff has commented as well. And I think I also feel that the width of the arrangement of this going kind of north to south, filling out the width of the rear of the lot, I think also contributes to it not feeling subordinate. And I don't see any reason why it can't become more of an east to west. I understand the applicant's, desire to maintain open space as much as possible in the backyard, but I think that comes at the cost of subordination. And I also would say overall, just the footprint of, I get the idea that the porch kind of feels like part of the footprint of the primary structure, but I think that making it even the same footprint is arguably not a subordinate move. Making it larger, I think, is just straightforwardly not subordinate. And I would not say that the porch should count toward the footprint of the primary structure.
Nick,
Yes, I would agree with the majority of the comments being made. I would go further to say, and I didn't see the first two iterations, given that I'm new to the commission, but I followed staff's notes, and it didn't sound like it ever really deviated that much from an initial submission. In that, as I look at it at a high level, the proposed structure appears suburban compared to the urban home that it is behind. So it seems like it would be more at home on a suburban tract than it would be in this historic context behind this historic home. And I would just say that is the bridge that, I would ask them to traverse in order to get more in line with the guidelines. The main house is strong. And in being subordinate doesn't necessarily mean you can't be strong visually. And I think that for me, that's where this breaks down.
great. I've not applied yet.
Well, I'm agreeing with all the comments on what I'm thinking. I'm not sure I should say what I'm thinking, but I might be doing this applicant a favor by denying it, because I'm not sure you can get furniture up that stairway, given the headroom conditions that are there. Maybe you can, but which really says it's too complicated a form, that there's too much program, you're trying to get too much programmable or usable square foot in a building that needs to be subordinate, and in the process, it's not subordinate and it's overly complicated. So it doesn't meet guidelines regarding simplicity and subordination.
All right, Gary, thank you. And it sounds like we're all in agreement. Do I hear a motion from the floor?
I can make the motion.
Erica, thank you.
Madam Chair, I move to deny application 2023-COA-208 for the new accessory dwelling unit at 3255 Newton Street as per design guidelines 4.1, 4.8, 4.18 through 4.20, 5.6, 5.18, character defining features for the Packards Hill Historic District, present a testimony, submit a documentation and information provided in the staff report.
There's a second. Erica, did you say 3225 or 3255?
I thought I said 3255, but is
I have
that
25 on my agenda. Is it 32?
It says 55 in the suggestion motion.
Okay, 32. Okay, 3255, then you've done correctly.
Okay.
And then, sorry. Yeah, or sorry. But that's okay. It's an error on the agenda. It's all right. All right.
It's 3225.
Oh, it is 3225. So
good catch?
I will make a friendly amendment. 3225 Newton Street to
I accept.
Okay, the second. You seconded, somebody said, George seconded, do you accept the amendment? George, do you
Yes.
accept the friendly amendment?
Oh, yes,
To
absolutely.
change the address, okay, so it's 3225 Newton Street, thanks for checking the clerk.
No, it's okay. It's 3255.
No, it's 3225.
I'm so sorry.
Then I remove the friendly amendment, we are at 3255 Newton Street. The original motion was correct, I removed the friendly amendment, all right. So, all in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. All right, gentlemen, you work with the staff, on your next submission, hopefully. You have nothing, again, go ahead.
Robin and Alex, before you leave this meeting, last night at city council, the city council passed a text amendment to the zoning code that will change how ADUs are developable, because a lot of your form came out of the 1.5 story requirement. That is no longer in place, but that doesn't go into effect until July 5th. And applications have to be submitted after June 30th. So I would consider looking at the changes to the Denver zoning code that were just passed by city council, because I think that will help your form a lot.
Sounds
All
great. Thanks for that heads up.
Thanks, gentlemen. All right, we are on now to our last design review project, which is 2023 COA 209 and 2023 COA 210 at 2841 and 2845 West 36th Avenue. And it's Brittany. Yeah.
So our last project is actually the review of design details for two new infill structures at 2841 and 2845 West 36th Avenue. The commission reviewed the phase one as one submittal, but they do have two separate COAs. As if these will get permitted, they will be on separate permits. I am still recommending we review them as one project, as the design details are very similar for each of these two structures, and there's no difference in that, but they are actually two separate projects. So here you have the proposed renderings for these projects. These will take the place of a non-contributing structure within the Potter Highlands Historic District. They are single family homes that are mirror images of each other. So in terms of this development, it is a two-story development on a block that is lower scale in nature for the Potter Highlands Historic District. However, the commission has approved the phase one mass form and context on February 7th, 2023. And there have been minimal changes to the mass and form. Actually, there have been no changes to the mass and form other than a change to the porch height in relationship to comment provided in the phase one that the floor to floor heights needed to be articulated to be more similar to the surrounding context, or give the appearance of more similar to the surrounding context. So this was the mass and scale submittal for these. Staff felt that the second floor read a little bit taller than the first floor. So the applicant adjusted that design to raise the string course on this proposal. And staff do feel that the string course placement, as you see in this elevation, is more appropriate. However, with the adjustment of the string course height, the applicant did raise the porch ceiling height. And we would recommend that the porch ceiling height be returned to the prior design, where it just landed right above that transom window. Generally speaking, we feel that the mass and scale is still appropriate for the structure. However, the porch does need to return to its prior design. In terms of the design details, this is a brick clad structure. It will be clad in red brick with a white mortar. There is a soldier course header detail above the windows, a soldier course header detail at the building cornice, and then a brick stepped brick parapet detail. Generally speaking, staff do not have concerns over the design details. However, there are some inconsistencies in the applicant's submitted plans that are not calling out the correct details. For instance, this notation here for brick soldier course is not indicated in the right location based on the elevation design. And then some places in the plans, it indicates a brick row lock sill, and then other places it indicates a precast concrete sill for those windows. Either detail would be appropriate. However, staff does believe that is intended to be a precast sill detail, just based on some of the other items in this middle. So we would ask that those items be corrected before we issue the COA on this project. For the rear elevation, there will be a metal railing at the back for that second floor balcony. There are also some inconsistencies here on terms of the door design and door functionality, so we would also ask for clarification there. But they're generally minor in nature, and it relates to this, the man door on the ground floor, which will not be super visible from the public right away. So just some inconsistencies with the application materials. So in terms of elevations, I have 2841 West 36 up here on the screen. However, 2845 West 36 is a very similar design because they are again mirror images of each other. So the primary structure will be clad in that brick, and it is a standard size brick that will wrap the entirety of the facade. The garage structure on the elevation fronting the primary structure will be clad in brick, and then it'll transition into a lap siding material on the secondary and alley elevations. Staff feel that that is appropriate for a secondary structure, as we see a number of new accessory structures that do have that detailing. The windows again here, you can see that header detail proposed and that brick sill detail proposed. They are single hung fiberglass composite windows, which is Fibrex windows, which have been approved by the commission for new construction. In terms of the front porch design, it has a 8x8 wood post and a metal canopy with a standing seam roof that you can see in this section detail here. The rear balcony is shown in section here, so it will have a brick column support and then a metal handrail in black. And then all of the windows are inset into the wall plane, as you can see in this image. Windows are only located on the brick clad portions of the primary structure and garage, so I didn't ask for a section detail through any siding material. I just want to make that clear as to why we only see the one section through the brick, as I know sometimes we see section details through the siding materials as well. Here are those details. Again, that make me think that the proposal will have the precast concrete sills for the windows, and then the soldier course at the header. Again, this is another inconsistency where this entry detail is showing the operation of a transom, but not actually showing the transom detail. So we would ask that be corrected. And that porch height, we do feel that needs to return to its prior design. That you can see those wood posts and metal canopy detail with that standing seam roof, which will be a black, but it will be so flat that it will not be visible from the public right away. This does have a raised foundation detail. Some portions of the proposal indicate a stone foundation, some indicate concrete. So again, that's another correction we would like to see to the plans. And then here you can see that detail of that stepped brick parapet and soldier course detail and those inset windows into the wall plane. So those are meeting our guidelines. Here it's showing again that soldier course at the header and the precast build at the windows. Here are the specific material details. So just a summit brick in Blake Street with the standard border color in buff. The garage cladding material will be in Allura siding. The application materials don't note if it's a smooth finish or a textured finish. Our guidelines do require a textured finish. This product does come in both of those finishes, and the commission has approved it previously on other projects, so we just need that confirmed. And then here you can see that precast natural gray color that I believe is proposed for the window sills and those Fibrex windows. So here are just some renderings of that proposed project, looking at 2841 on the left side of your screen, and then looking at 2845 West 36 On the right side, the garage structure will have a outdoor fireplace detail that you can see in this rendering here. It's not visible from the public right away, so we don't have major concerns over that. But generally, we are recommending approval of this project with some minor conditions, and those conditions are return the porch height to the prior height shown in the phase 1 submittal, confirm the siding finish for the lap siding on the garage, and then just correct inaccuracies in the submittal materials.
Brittany, thank you. Commissioners, questions?
I had one question about the garage doors. I didn't think I saw them. And that would be something that we should have, correct?
That was probably something I lumped into inaccuracies and the
Okay.
drawing submittal materials, but you could be more specific if you
Okay.
felt like.
Other questions? For Brittany? This one? Doesn't look like it. Taylor, do we have our applicant with us?
Dorothy and Abby, you should be able to unmute and turn your cameras on now.
Hi there.
And
Hi there.
hold on one second, Dorothy, I'm pulling up your presentation.
Sure, no worries.
When we get started, if you could begin your presentation by giving your name and address, that would be great. I think we have like 10 minutes and
Sure. Dorothy Ma. Address is 8905 Ridgepoint Way, Castle Pines, Colorado, 80108. I'll probably just run through this pretty quickly. I think, Brittany covered just about everything, and then we do agree with some of the minor adjustments that need to be made. A lot of them are just seem like annotation and maybe some graphic issues. So maybe we'll just run through this so everybody can get going. All right. Next, if you want to go to the next page. Yeah, as Brittany mentioned, it's 2 single-family projects, but they're essentially identical and separated as 2 lots. And as she recommended as it being viewed as one, I mean, we're fine either way. So however you guys want to approach it, I know when we get to building permit, it will require it to be 2 separate permits, but essentially identical in design. Next page, please. And, I think just confirming some of the inconsistencies that Brittany did mention. So yes, it is a concrete sill, and yes, there is a soldier, the soldier course and the rollax. So I think it's just a graphic arrow pointing. I think when we adjusted the height, some of those didn't get moved to exactly to point at where it needs to point. And then same with the transom, the front door should have a transom above. It seems like maybe it's just a graphic error that we missed as well. And we are fine with the recommendation that Brittany suggested with returning the porch height back to what we had previously. So that's an easy adjustment on our end, and shouldn't be an issue for us to make that as well. Next slide. Some of these details, as she mentioned, just the running bond at the cornice at the roof, and some of the brick details that we talked about. Next slide, please. I think the one thing we do want to mention is that we have had a preliminary review with the zoning separately just to look at the overall, and we did run into a lot coverage issue. So we are proposing that we reduce the width of that rear balcony that you see in that middle balcony section. I believe currently it's 5'4" and some change, and we're going to reduce it to about 3'9". So design and everything stays the same. It's literally just the width, and then also that fireplace feature, we are hoping that maybe that might have to go away. And so Brittany, I don't know if that's a conversation we need to have in terms of the submittal, but it just puts us over the lot coverage, and we wanted to make sure that we are within the lot coverage without affecting the overall characteristics of what Landmark has already approved and is looking at currently. So next page. So some of these drawings and sections showing the brick detailing and then the window types as we talked about. And again, we'll go through and make sure kind of the annotations are at the right locations on all the color as well as the black and white drawings. Yeah, if you want to just kind of flip through these. I think Brittany already did a pretty good job of going through the materials palette. So I'll just kind of hand it over from here and have you guys see if you have any questions for us. But we are fine adjusting, per the recommendations that Brittany mentioned, and then just correcting any of the inconsistencies in the drawings as discussed. So.
Okay, great. Dorothy, thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
Yes, I just have one.
Larry?
Oh, yeah, one question. On this cornice detail, and it looks like also on some of these row lock details, the brick projects 2 inches from the main brick veneer. And as far as I understand, going much past an inch is not generally recommended. Is there a particular way that you're planning to achieve that?
No, and that might be just a graphic, right? Because we have an L angle shown, so it probably just is a graphic. It doesn't say 2 inches. So it probably needs to get adjusted to an inch.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
In the prior reviews, did anybody discuss the roof for the front porch, the entry?
In what capacity? Can you elaborate a little bit?
It's drainage and it's roofing material. The standing seam, I think, is that what's proposed on top? Standing seam metal,
Yes.
but it's virtually flat.
No, it'll have the 1/4 inch per foot slope.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a roofing manufacturer that will warrant that. That's a technical issue or a friendly comment. And then there's no controlled drainage, it just flows onto the entry sidewalk.
No, we do have, so Abby, we do show, I have Abby on here. I don't know if our site plan shows where the downspouts come down, but we do have downspouts. Maybe the
should be in the southeast corner there, and I think it just connects into the downspout that comes from the second level.
Yeah, maybe not in this particular drawing.
So there's a gutter across the front. And then a downspout down the post.
It is essentially a downspout along the building, right, Abby? That kind of. Or
yeah, that's correct.
Or maybe it's down the post. Can you go to the?
I don't have all the pages on the commission, but the commissions have the plans and this is go to any pages I can.
It should be visible in one of the 3D views from the southeast, I think.
Yeah, so typically we'll do an internal, so it's not an exposed, when we have a roof like that, it's not a gutter along the fascia, right? So it's an internal drain that then downspouts to a spout that probably returns back to the, so it's not coming down along the post, but along the edge of the building. And we can send you that, we can draw out that detail or send it in more particular if that's something you want to look at in more detail.
So here is you. That is actually not. Yeah.
Yeah, so you see that the downspout that's from the top roof of the building, so essentially the drainage would kind of come in from the connect into that, but it's not a gutter along the fascia.
Yeah, I see it. So I think that's a way to solve it. to bring it back through to the building and a tie to the other downspout somehow. But I think your profile is gonna change that. It's gonna get taller to accomplish that internally.
I mean, it's a pretty low slope and currently I think we have, what do we have? Abby, 9 inches?
I think it's just over 10 total.
Yeah, how is that? Is it a 2x6, 2x8, 2x10, 2x12 framing out to the posts?
Yeah, typically 2x8 is probably what we would frame for those.
Yeah, I don't know, how you do it in that narrow profile, but. I would think that would, it will discuss that as we go into deliberations, I suppose. As we move in.
Yeah, and if if you need us to provide an additional detail for that particular roof, we're happy to do so.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicants? No, doesn't look like it. Okay, great. Let's see if there is anyone from the public who would like to chat with us. If you're on phone, dial 9 on your keypad and raise your hand, or email landmark@denvergov.org. If you're on computer, just click on the little hand and raise your hand for us. I don't see anybody. Taylor, go.
No, sorry.
Nope. All right, no public comments. Staff, did you have any additional comments?
So I heard some revisions already mentioned to the depth of the rear balcony and the fireplace to address lot coverage issues. Those are things that I'd probably review administratively and not forward back to the commission for review.
Okay.
And depending on what happens with the roof, I may or may not forward that back to the commission for review. I'd have to see plans related to the porch roof. The flat roof was the shape and form of the porch roof was reviewed in the phase 1. The specific materials, Nick, like you were asking about the standing seam, that is within this purview. So if you feel that's not appropriate, that would be for discussion today.
Okay, questions? Yeah. Okay, great. Then, alrighty, let's go into deliberation, commissioners. Nick, you want to start?
Sure. I generally support staff's assessment and recommendation. I just have a concern as expressed in my questions to the architect. It was the architect or the owner? Architect.
Dorothy is the architect.
Yeah, regarding the materials, means and methods for constructing that porch roof, which may have impact visually, that may not have been considered in prior discussions. And this is perhaps our chance to nail that down, and I don't know the best way to do it. Either through administrative review, I would trust that, or through condition, either way.
That condition is administrative.
Right. So we
Yeah.
would add that to the conditions. And still good in this case. So it sounds like that's where the commission wants to go. It would be.
Got it.
All right. Anyone else?
I think the final drawing should pay closer attention to brick coursing, and I think the overall design is great. But there's some brick coursing issues that need to be sorted out. Some of the window openings are modular. The width of the building's not modular. The brick piers between the paired windows. Some of them aren't dimensioned, but they're represented as having a head joint in the middle of what might be an 8-inch brick pier. I mean, I just think you need to look at the brick detailing in its entirety. The cornice is also some concern. You've got a couple of bricks that aren't supported don't appear to be supported. Very top grade, so all that needs to be kind of looked at. I don't think those are conditions that, or issues that can be resolved or looked at in the final staff review.
We could look at that, like, you have made conditions before that the work could be modular, I believe. The specifics on the parapet, like being supported, that would be inspected during construction.
Hopefully.
Those things.
I wondered how those stayed up.
Alright. But the applicant did indicate that there did need to be some adjustments made based on comments from Larry.
Larry, did you want to expound on?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I appreciate that they are willing to adjust those, because I think that at the end of the day, they're probably gonna get built with 1-inch projections. And yeah, I kind of share some similar questions. I don't, but I guess at the, sorry, as Nick about the porch roof, but I guess at the end of the day, if it, you know, increases to 10 or 11 inches from the 8 inches shown, I don't think that would necessarily detract from, like, I don't think it would make it incompatible with the context. But it would be, I guess it would just be nice in these reviews if those kinds of deep street facing facade were more accurate.
Anybody else? So if we go forward with the motion to approve, would you like to add that?
Sure. Yep.
How do you feel about that? All right. Then do I hear a motion? Nick? Would you like to take?
I'll take a stab.
Okay, great.
Madam Chair, I move to approve application number 2023 COA 209 and number 2023 COA 210 for the Phase 2 design details at 2841 West 36th Avenue and 2845 West 36th Avenue as per design guidelines 4.1 through 4.8, 4.15, 4.18 through 4.19. Character defining features for the Potter Highlands Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. 1, return the porch height to the prior porch height shown in the Phase 1 submittal. 2, confirm siding finish and, but not yet and. 3, correct inaccuracies in the submittal materials. And 4, ensure that the front porch roof is detailed sufficiently to drain internally so as not to detract from the visual appearance from the street.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. I'd like to add another condition about making sure that the brick detailing is modular.
Do you accept?
I accept.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. All in favor, aye. All opposed, nay. All right, it has been approved with conditions and y'all can work with Brittany in future. Thank you very much. That concludes our design review projects for the day. Are there any business items? Or none? Are there any discussion items? There are none. So there are no discussion items. So it's like it's 3:55 in the afternoon. I am adjourning the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Staff, thank you very much. Do you have anything?
Yes, thank you. Good job, everybody.
Oh, Gary.